Jiwoo woke up to someone knocking loudly on her door. She sat up quickly, confused and disoriented. Sunlight was streaming through her window. What time was it? She looked at her clock and gasped. It was already 8 in the morning. She had slept through her alarm, then she remembered. The pups. She looked around frantically, but the bed was empty. Where were they? The knocking came again, more insistent this time. Jiwoo, are you okay in there? You missed the morning briefing. It was Commander Heejin Kwon, her friend and the station's second-in-command. Jiwoo jumped out of bed and looked around wildly. Where had the pups gone? She heard a soft clicking sound from under her bed. Relief flooded through her. They were hiding. Smart little creatures. Just a minute, Jiwoo called out. She quickly pulled on her uniform jacket and tried to smooth down her messy hair. Then she opened the door just a crack. Hyejin stood there with her arms crossed, looking concerned. She was a short woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. You never miss briefings. What's going on? I just overslept, Jiwoo said, trying to sound casual. Long night in the labs. Hyejin's eyes narrowed. Can I come in? Now is not a good time. I need to shower and... But Heejin was already pushing the door open. She was small but strong, and Jiwoo could not stop her without making a scene. The commander walked into the room and looked around. Her eyes immediately went to Jiwoo's blanket on the floor, which now had several small tears in it from claws. Then she saw the empty food containers scattered around. Then she heard the clicking sound from under the bed. Heejin turned to look at Jiwoo with raised eyebrows. Want to tell me what you have under your bed? Jiwoo closed her eyes. There was no point in lying now. Promise you will not overreact? I never promised that, Heejin said, but she was smiling a little. Show me. Jiwoo got down on her knees and looked under the bed. 3 pairs of glowing eyes looked back at her. It's okay, she said softly. This is my friend. She won't hurt you. Slowly, the pups crawled out from under the bed. They stayed close to Jiwoo, eyeing Heejin with suspicion. Kira, the brave one, positioned herself in front of the other 2 protectively. Hyejin stared at the 3 Vrexian pups for a long moment. Then she started laughing. It was not a mean laugh, but one of pure surprise and amusement. Oh, Jiwoo, only you would smuggle baby aliens into your room. Only you. I did not smuggle them, Jiwoo protested. I found them hiding in the maintenance corridor. They were cold and scared. What was I supposed to do? Report them to security immediately? Heejin suggested, but she was already kneeling down to get a better look at the pups. Though I admit, they are kind of cute in a scaly, potentially deadly sort of way. Ren, curious about this new human, took a cautious step toward Hyejin. The commander stayed very still, letting the pup approach at its own pace. Ren sniffed at Heejin's hand and then, apparently deciding she was acceptable, made a friendly clicking sound. Does Commander Vel know? Heejin asked. Yes, they came by last night. We are working on a plan, which is... Jiwoo explained the idea about making it an official cultural exchange program. Heejin listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. She was quiet for a moment, considering all the angles. It could work, she finally said, but we would need approval from Ambassador Yoon Seo, and she would need approval from Earth government. That takes time. What do we do with the pups in the meantime? Keep them here. Keep them safe. Heejin looked at the 3 young Vrexians who were now exploring her quarters with growing confidence. Tayo had found Jiwoo's collection of rocks from different planets and was trying to eat one. They cannot stay in your quarters forever. They need space to move around. They need proper food. Do you even know what they eat? Jiwoo had not thought about that. Meat? They are predators. We'll need to consult with medical. Bora will know what to do. Heejin stood up and pulled out her communicator. Let me call her. If we are going to do this, we need to do it right. Within 20 minutes, Dr. Bora Nam arrived. She was the station's chief medical officer, a kind woman with gentle hands and a practical mind. When she saw the pups, her face lit up with scientific interest. Fascinating, she breathed, pulling out her scanner. I have never seen juvenile Vrexians this close. May I examine them? Jiwoo helped hold the pups still while Bora scanned them. Kira tried to bite the scanner once, but Jiwoo gently redirected her. No biting medical equipment, she said, as if scolding a puppy. Bora finished her scans and nodded approvingly. They are healthy, though slightly underweight for their age. They need protein-rich food, lots of it. Their metabolism is incredibly fast. I will prepare a proper diet plan. She looked up at Jiwoo with warm eyes. You did a good thing finding them. They would not have lasted long in those cold corridors. So you will help? Jiwoo asked hopefully. Of course. What kind of doctor would I be if I did not care for children in need? Bora smiled and reached out to pet Tayo, who leaned into her touch. Besides, they are adorable, even if they will grow up to be 8 feet tall and very scary. The three women spent the next hour making plans. They would need to keep the pups hidden until the official approvals came through. Jiwoo's quarters were too small, but there was an unused storage room next to the science lab that could work temporarily. They would need to bring in heating elements to keep it warm enough. They would need toys and entertainment to keep 3 energetic young predators occupied. This is going to be complicated, Hyejin said. But she was smiling. But I think we can manage it. Ambassador Yunseo arrived just before noon, summoned by Hyejin. The ambassador was an elegant woman in her 50s with silver hair and a diplomatic smile that could mean anything. She listened to the whole story without interrupting, her face giving nothing away. When they finished explaining, Yunseo was quiet for a long moment. The pups, sensing something important was happening, stayed close to Jiwoo. Finally, the ambassador spoke. This could either be a disaster or an opportunity, she said carefully. If we handle it wrong, it could insult the Vrexians and damage our alliance. If we handle it right, it could strengthen our relationship with them. She looked at the pups, her expression softening slightly. How long have they been here? Since last night, Jiwoo admitted. And Commander Vel is aware? Yes, Vel is speaking with the Vrexian High Command right now. Yunseo nodded slowly. Then we move forward carefully. I will contact Earth and present this as a cultural exchange program that we initiated. We will make it seem planned, intentional. The key is confidence. If we act like this was always the plan, others will believe it. You will help us? Jiwoo asked, hope blooming in her chest. I will, Yunseo said. But understand, Dr. Park, you have just made yourself responsible for 3 alien children. That is not a small thing. You will need to care for them, keep them safe, and help them adjust to being around humans. Are you prepared for that? Jiwoo looked down at Kira, Ren, and Tayo. They looked back at her with trusting eyes, their scales glowing with a steady, calm light. She thought about her brother Taemin back on Earth, how he had always looked up to her. She thought about all the human children she had helped babysit over the years. How different could this be? Very different, probably, but also somehow the same. Yes, she said firmly. I am prepared. The rest of the day was a blur of activity. Engineer Da-Un Choi arrived to help set up the storage room with proper heating and safety features. Security Officer Jae-hyun Song came by to establish a security protocol, though he ended up spending most of his time playing a simple clapping game with Ren, who found it hilarious. I have 3 nieces back home, Jae-hyun explained, grinning as Ren tried to copy his hand movements.
Kids are kids no matter how many scales they have. By evening, the storage room was transformed into a comfortable space for the pups.
There were heated mats on the floor, soft surfaces to climb on, and even some simple toys that Da-Un had created from spare parts. The pups explored their new space with excited clicks and chirps, but when Jiwoo tried to leave, all 3 pups immediately rushed to her side. Tayo grabbed onto her leg with small claws, not hard enough to hurt but firm enough to make a point. Kira made a distressed sound and Ren's scales flickered with anxiety. They have bonded to you, Bora observed. That was fast even for social species. What does that mean? Jiwoo asked, gently trying to detach Tayo from her leg. It means they see you as their caregiver now, possibly even as their parent. Bora smiled sympathetically. You cannot just leave them here alone, Jiwoo. Not yet, they need you. So Jiwoo stayed. She brought her work tablet and sat in the storage room while the pups played. When they got tired, they all curled up around her on one of the heated mats. She stroked their scales and hummed soft songs from Earth, and they made contented purring clicks in response. Vel came by late that night to check on the offspring. The commander stood in the doorway watching Jiwoo sitting on the floor with 3 sleeping pups draped across her lap. The High Command is considering the exchange program proposal, Vel said quietly. They are suspicious but interested. They want to know what humans could possibly teach Vrexian warriors. We can teach them that strength comes in many forms, Jiwoo said, careful not to wake the sleeping pups. Commander Vel arrived at Jiwoo's quarters within 10 minutes. When the door opened, the Vrexian warrior stood there in full armor, looking like a creature from nightmares. 8 feet of scaled muscle and sharp claws with markings that glowed an aggressive red. But as soon as Vel saw the 3 pups on Jiwoo's blanket, all that warrior posture collapsed. The mighty commander made a sound that Jiwoo had never heard of Rexian make before. It was somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. Vel's scales changed color rapidly, flashing through different shades that Jiwoo guessed meant distress or shame or both. "They followed me," Vel said, the translator device around the commander's neck, turning the growling words into clear human speech. "I did not know. I swear by the burning stars I did not know they were on the transport." Jiwoo gestured for Vel to come inside. The commander had to duck to fit through the human-sized doorway. As soon as Vel entered, the 3 pups woke up. They made excited clicking sounds and rushed to their parent, climbing up Vel's legs and trying to get closer to the commander's face. But Vel stepped back, almost pushing them away. The pups fell silent, confused. Their glow dimmed again. "No," Vel said firmly. "You cannot do this. You must be strong. You must learn discipline." Jiwoo watched this with growing understanding. She remembered what she had learned about Rexian culture during her briefings. Adults never showed affection to their young. They believed that love made you weak, that softness would get you killed on their harsh world. Rexian parents trained their pups through hardship and distance, preparing them for a brutal life. "Vel," Jiwoo said gently, "you can touch them. It's okay. No one is watching." "That is not our way," Vel said. But the commander's voice shook slightly. "They must learn to be hard. The universe is cruel. Softness is death." "Maybe," Jiwoo said. "But they are still children. Look at them, Vel. They are scared and cold and they just want their parent." The smallest pup, the one Jiwoo would later learn was named Tayo, made a sad little sound. It reached up toward Vel with one small paw. The commander looked down at the pup and something in those alien eyes looked heartbroken. "They should not have come," Vel said quietly. "When I spoke of the humans of the station, they must have listened. They must have hidden in my transport crate. I did not check because I never thought—" The commander's voice trailed off. "This could destroy everything. If the High Command learns that my offspring were so undisciplined, so weak that they followed me here, I will be removed from my position. Perhaps worse?" Jiwoo sat down on the floor next to the pups. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and stroked the largest pup's head. The pup, who she would learn was named Kira, leaned into her touch. Its scales were cool and smooth like touching a snake, but warmer. Almost nice. "Why do you call love weakness?" Jiwoo asked. "Humans don't think that way. We think love makes us stronger. It gives us something to protect, something to fight for." Vel stared at her like she had said something impossible. "You are soft-skins. You come from an easy world. You do not understand what it means to survive." "Actually," Jiwoo said with a small smile, "Earth was not easy. We had predators that hunted us. We had ice ages and droughts and diseases. Humans should have died out many times. But we survived. Do you know how?" Vel did not answer. "We survived because we worked together. We took care of each other. We protected our young and our old. We were not the fastest or the strongest or the most dangerous creatures on Earth, but we had each other. That made us the apex predator in the end." The medium pup Ren had walked over to Jiwoo and was now climbing into her lap. It was heavier than it looked, probably about 30 pounds of solid muscle and scale, but it curled up against her like a cat, making that soft clicking purr sound, "You see?" Jiwoo said. "Even your pups understand. They know they need comfort and warmth and safety. That is not weakness, Commander. That is nature. All young creatures need this." Vel watched as the 3 pups gathered around the human woman. The commander's scales kept shifting colors, showing emotions that Vrexians usually kept hidden. Finally, Vel sat down on the floor too. It was awkward, seeing such a large warrior sitting on the ground in a small human quarters, but Vel did it anyway. "I had 4 offspring once," Vel said quietly. "Before these 3. When I was younger, I tried to raise them the proper way, the hard way. 3 of them did not survive the training." Jiwoo felt her heart break. "I'm so sorry." "That is our way," Vel said, but the words sounded hollow. "Only the strong survive. That is how we became great, is it?" Jiwoo asked. "Or is it just how things have always been done? Maybe there could be another way." Before Vel could answer, Tayo, the smallest pup, managed to climb onto Vel's armored leg. The pup struggled, its little claws slipping on the smooth metal, but it kept trying. Finally, it reached Vel's torso and pressed its small face against the commander's chest, right over where a Vrexian heart would be. Vel sat frozen, not pushing the pup away but not embracing it either. The commander's translator device made a strange sound, like it was trying to translate emotions it did not have words for. "They are warm," Vel finally said, so quietly that Jiwoo almost did not hear it. "I had forgotten how warm they feel." "You can hold them," Jiwoo encouraged. "Just for a moment. No one will know." Vel's hands, huge and clawed and built for war, slowly lifted to touch Tayo. The pup immediately made happy clicking sounds and climbed up to Vel's shoulder. Then Kira and Ren noticed, and they scrambled over too, trying to cover their parent in affection. For just a moment, Commander Vel, the feared Vrexian warrior, held all three pups close. The commander's scales turned a soft blue color that Jiwoo had never seen before. It was beautiful. Then Vel carefully set the pups down and stood up. The warrior mask was back in place. "This changes nothing," Vel said. "They must return to the ship tomorrow. I will find a way to send them home without causing a scandal. Or," Jiwoo said, standing up too, "we could find another way." What other way could there be? Jiwoo thought for a moment. Her mind worked through the problem like solving a science equation. What if this was not an accident? What if it was an official exchange program? What if we said that the pups came here as part of a youth cultural exchange between our species? Vel tilted their large head, considering. That would require approval from both our governments. Then we'll get approval. "I'll talk to Commander Hyojin and Ambassador Yunseo. You talk to your superiors. We'll make this official, make it look planned. That way no one loses face and the pups get to stay." "Why would you do this?" Vel asked. "Why do you care about my offspring?" Jiwoo looked down at the three pups who were now back on her heated blanket, fighting over her pillow in a playful way that made her smile. "Because they are children," she said simply. "And children deserve to be safe and happy no matter what species they are. That is a very human thing to believe." Vel was quiet for a long time. Finally, the commander nodded slowly. "I will speak with the High Command. But I make no promises. Our people do not understand softness." "Maybe it's time they learned," Jiwoo said. After Vel left, Jiwoo sat down in her chair and watched the pups play fight on her blanket. Kira was clearly the leader, bossing the other two around. Ren was clever, using strategy instead of strength. And little Tayo just wanted everyone to be friends. They were not so different from human children, really. Around 3 in the morning, Jiwoo's eyes started to close. She had been awake for almost 20 hours. She needed to sleep. The pup seemed content on the blanket, so she moved to her bed. But just as she was drifting off, she felt something at the foot of her bed. She opened her eyes and saw Tayo climbing up onto the mattress. The little pup struggled with the height but made it eventually. It walked carefully up to Jiwoo and curled up against her feet. "Tayo," Jiwoo whispered, "you should stay on the warm blanket with your siblings." But Tayo just made a soft clicking purr and pressed closer. The scales were cool but not unpleasant, and the pup was surprisingly gentle. Jiwoo sighed and let it stay. Soon she felt the weight of Ren joining them. Then Kira. By the time Jiwoo fell asleep, all 3 Vrexian predator pups were snuggled around her on the bed, their bioluminescent markings glowing softly in the dark like small nightlights. She should have been scared. These were apex predators, even young ones, but all she felt was warmth and a strange sense of rightness. This was what humans did best. They made family out of anything, built bridges across impossible divides, and loved creatures that others feared. Tomorrow would bring problems and complications. But tonight, 3 scared children were safe and warm, and that was enough. The diplomatic station floated quietly in space halfway between 2 different worlds. Inside, Dr. Jiwoo Park walked down the empty corridor, her soft shoes making almost no sound on the metal floor. It was late, well past midnight by Earth time, and most of the crew was sleeping. She carried a small tablet in her hands, checking the temperature readings from the science labs. Something was wrong with the heating system in Section D, and she wanted to fix it before morning. Jiwoo was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life forms. For the past 3 months she had been working on this station, learning about the Vrexians. They were huge creatures standing 8 feet tall with scales that glowed softly in the dark. They looked like wolves mixed with lizards, and everyone in the galaxy feared them. The Vrexians came from a death world where everything was trying to kill everything else. They were hunters, warriors, and survivors. Most species stayed far away from them, but Jiwoo found them fascinating. She had spent hours talking with Commander Vel, one of the Vrexian leaders on the station. Vel was tough and serious, like all Vrexians, but Jiwoo noticed something others missed. Sometimes when Vel thought no one was watching, the commander looked sad and tired. Tonight, during the cultural exchange dinner, Vel had barely eaten anything. The Vrexian kept looking at the door, distracted and nervous. Jiwoo had wanted to ask what was wrong, but the dinner ended before she could. Now, walking through the quiet station, she wondered if Vel was okay. She turned a corner into the maintenance corridor and stopped. There was a sound, soft and strange. It sounded like clicking mixed with small whimpers. Jiwoo stood very still, listening. The sound came from behind a stack of supply boxes near the wall. Slowly, carefully, she walked closer. Her heart beat faster. What could it be, an animal? A malfunction in the machinery? She moved one box aside, then another. Her tablet's light shone into the small space behind the boxes. 3 pairs of eyes stared back at her. They glowed bright yellow in the darkness, and they were full of fear. Jiwoo gasped but did not scream. She knew what she was looking at. These were Vrexian pups, young ones, probably not even a year old. Their scales were duller than adults, still soft in places. The glow from their markings flickered like broken lights, showing how scared they were. The smallest one tried to press itself further into the corner, making that clicking sound again. "Oh no," Jiwoo whispered. "What are you doing here?" The pups did not answer, of course. They just stared at her with those big, frightened eyes. Jiwoo's mind raced. Pups on the station? This was against every rule, every protocol. If anyone found out, there would be serious trouble. This could ruin the peace talks between humans and Vrexians. She should report this immediately. She should call Commander Hee-jin or Ambassador Yun-seo. That was the right thing to do. The proper procedure. But as she looked at the 3 small creatures huddled together in the cold maintenance corridor, something inside her could not do it. They were children. They were scared and cold and hiding. Every instinct in her body told her to help them, not report them. "It's okay," she said softly, even though they probably could not understand her words. "I won't hurt you," the largest pup hissed at her, trying to sound dangerous. But it came out weak and shaky. Jiwoo knew that sound. It was the sound of someone trying to be brave when they were actually terrified. She sat down on the floor, making herself smaller, less threatening. "Are you hungry?" she asked. She pulled a nutrition bar from her pocket and broke it in half. Slowly, she pushed one piece toward them across the floor. The pups watched the food but did not move. They watched Jiwoo with wide eyes. Minutes passed. Jiwoo did not move. She just sat there, patient and calm. Finally, the medium-sized pup stretched its neck out and grabbed the food with its teeth. It pulled back quickly and ate the bar in one bite. The other 2 watched with hungry eyes. "There's more where that came from," Jiwoo said. "But not here. It's too cold here, and someone will find you by morning. Will you come with me?" She stood up slowly and took a step back. The pups pressed against each other. Jiwoo waited. She knew she could not force them. She had to let them choose. After a long moment, the largest pup stood up. It was still smaller than a large dog, but its claws clicked on the metal floor. It took one careful step toward Jiwoo, then another. The other 2 followed, staying close to their sibling. "That's good," Jiwoo said encouragingly. "Follow me. I have a warm place for you." She walked slowly back through the corridor, and the 3 pups followed her at a distance. Every few steps, she looked back to make sure they were still there. Her mind was already working on a plan. She needed to get them to her quarters without anyone seeing. Then she needed to figure out where they came from and why they were here. The station was mostly empty at this hour, but Jiwoo still felt like her heart might jump out of her chest. What was she doing? This was crazy. These were not puppies or kittens. These were Vrexian predators, even if they were young. Their species had conquered dozens of planets. They were dangerous, but when she looked back at them, stumbling along on legs still learning how to work properly, scales dull with cold and stress, she could not think of them as dangerous. They were just babies. She reached her quarters and opened the door quickly. The pups hesitated at the entrance. The smallest one whimpered again. Jiwoo stepped inside and knelt down, holding out her hand. "It's safe," she promised. "Come inside." One by one, the pups entered her quarters. As soon as the door closed behind them, Jiwoo let out a breath she did not know she was holding. She had just smuggled 3 Vrexian pups into her room. This was either the kindest or the stupidest thing she had ever done. Probably both. The pups stood in the middle of her small room, looking around with curious but cautious eyes. Now that she could see them in better light, Jiwoo realized they were even younger than she thought. Their scales still had that soft, almost fuzzy texture that juvenile Vrexians had. They were shivering. "You must be freezing," she said. The station was kept at a comfortable temperature for humans, which meant it was much too cold for Vrexians who evolved on a hot, harsh planet. Jiwoo moved to her bed and pulled off her heated blanket. Her brother Taemin had sent it to her from Earth as a birthday present. It was programmed to adjust to her body temperature and keep her warm. She spread it on the floor and turned the heat up. "Here," she said, patting the blanket. "This will help." The pups watched her with uncertain eyes. The largest one took a cautious step forward and touched the blanket with one claw. When it felt the warmth, its scales brightened slightly. The pup stepped fully onto the blanket and the others quickly followed. Within seconds, all three pups were lying on the heated blanket, their bodies soaking up the warmth. The clicking sounds they made changed from fearful to something almost like purring. Their glowing markings steadied into a soft, regular pulse. Jiwoo smiled despite the serious situation. She grabbed her communicator and sent a private, encrypted message to Commander Vel. "I have something that belongs to you. Come to my quarters immediately. Come alone." Then she sat down in her chair and watched the three pups on her blanket. They were already starting to relax, their eyes drooping. The smallest one yawned, showing rows of tiny, sharp teeth. What had she gotten herself into? And more importantly, how was she going to fix this without causing an intergalactic incident? But as she watched the pups finally feel safe enough to rest, Jiwoo knew she would figure it out. She had to. Because that was what humans did. They protected the young, no matter where those young came from. Even if those young had scales and claws and came from the most feared species in the galaxy. The message came on the 7th day. A Vrexian war frigate was approaching the station. High Commander Kale was aboard, along with 3 other members of the Vrexian Leadership Council. They were coming to retrieve the pups and investigate what they called a breach of protocol. Ambassador Yun Seo called an emergency meeting with all the humans involved. Jiwoo stood in the conference room with Hyejin, Bora, Daeun, and Jaehyun. They all looked worried. Vel was there too, standing separate from the humans, the commander's scales showing deep anxiety through shifting dark colors. "They are not happy," Vel said flatly. "High Commander Kale is old-fashioned, traditional. The commander believes in the ancient ways, the hard ways. Kale has never approved of the alliance with humans. Soft skins, the commander calls you. Prey species playing at diplomacy." "That is not very nice," Jaehyun muttered. "That is just how Kale sees the universe," Vel explained. "The strong rule. The weak serve or die. There is no middle ground in Kale's mind." "Then we will change Kale's mind," Jiwoo said with more confidence than she felt. "We will show them what we have done here. We will show them how happy the pups are, how healthy, how much they have learned." "You do not understand," Vel said. And for the first time, Jiwoo heard real fear in the commander's voice. "Kale does not care about happiness. Kale cares about strength and honor and tradition. The pups being happy with humans will only prove to Kale that they are weak, that I have failed as a parent. Kale could take them away from me. Could send them to the training worlds where pups go to become warriors or die trying." The room fell silent. The thought of these 3 young, playful, curious pups being sent to some brutal training facility made Jiwoo feel sick. "We will not let that happen," she said firmly. "How will you stop it?" Vel asked. "You are one human scientist. Kale is the high commander of the Vrexian fleet. If Kale wants to take my offspring, no one can stop it." "Maybe one human cannot stop it," Hyejin said, standing up. "But 6 humans together? That is different. That is a team. And humans are very good at working in teams. What are you suggesting?" Ambassador Yun Seo asked. "I am suggesting we make this bigger than just 3 pups," Hyejin said. "We make this about the future of Vrexian-human relations. We make this about showing the Vrexians that there is another way, a better way. And we start by showing High Commander Kale exactly what Jiwoo has accomplished here." The war frigate docked with the station at noon the next day. High Commander Kyle was the first to exit, and Jiwoo understood immediately why Vel was afraid. Kale was massive even by Vrexian standards, nearly 9 feet tall with battle scars across every visible scale. The commander's armor was dark metal covered in symbols that Jiwoo guessed were military honors. Kale's scales were a deep blood red color, and they did not shift or change. This was a Vrexian who never doubted, never questioned, never wavered. 3 other Vrexians followed Kale out. They were all large, all warriors, all carrying themselves with that aggressive confidence that Jiwoo had learned meant, I am ready to fight at any moment. The welcoming committee met them in the main docking bay. Ambassador Yunseo stood at the front, diplomatic and calm. Vel stood beside her, clearly uncomfortable. Jiwoo and the others waited behind them. High Commander Kale, Yunseo said with a respectful bow. Welcome to our station. We are honored by your presence. Kyle looked down at the small human ambassador with something that might have been contempt. Where are the offspring? The commander's voice was deep and harsh, translated by a device that made it sound even more aggressive. They are safe and well cared for, Yunseo replied smoothly. We have been conducting a cultural exchange program, as was explained in our communications. There was no exchange program, Kyle said bluntly. There was a failure of discipline. Commander Vel's offspring snuck aboard a transport like prey animals fleeing danger. This is shameful. This is weakness. With respect, High Commander, Yunseo said, her voice still calm but with steel underneath. Perhaps we could discuss this matter in a more private setting, and perhaps you would like to see the offspring before making any final judgments. Kale stared at her for a long moment. Then with a sharp gesture, the commander agreed. Show me. They walked through the station to the room where the pups were waiting. Jiwoo had spent the morning preparing them for this meeting. She had explained who Kyle was, why the commander was coming, and what might happen. Will they take us away? Tayo had asked, scales flickering with fear. I will do everything I can to prevent that, Jiwoo had promised. But I need you 3 to be brave. Can you do that? Now, as they approached the room, Jiwoo felt her heart racing. Everything depended on the next few minutes. She opened the door and Kale stepped inside. The 3 pups were sitting together on their heated mat, exactly as Jiwoo had instructed. When they saw Kale, their scales immediately dimmed, showing submission and fear. This was the proper Vrexian response to a superior officer. They were being good Vrexian children, but then Kale took 1 step toward them, aggressive and commanding, and everything Jiwoo had planned fell apart. Tayo yelped in fear and ran to hide behind Jiwoo's legs. Ren and Kira immediately moved to protect their smaller sibling, positioning themselves between Tayo and Kale, making defensive hissing sounds. But they were scared too. Their scales showed it clearly, and Jiwoo, acting on pure human instinct, stepped in front of all 3 pups, putting her own small body between them and the massive Vrexian commander. You are scaring them, she said, her voice shaking but firm. Please step back. The room went completely silent. Everyone stared at Jiwoo in shock. A human, a tiny human who barely came up to Kale's chest, had just told the High Commander of the Vrexian fleet what to do. Kale stared down at her with unreadable eyes. You dare give me commands, Softskin? I dare protect children who are under my care, Jiwoo said. That is what humans do. We protect the young even from those more powerful than us, especially from those more powerful than us. These are not your young, Kale growled. They are Vrexian. They belong to Commander Vel and to the Vrexian people. They are children, Jiwoo countered. And right now, they need someone who will put their well-being first. Look at them, High Commander. They are terrified of you. Is that what you want? For your young to fear their own kind? Fear teaches respect. Fear teaches survival. No, Jiwoo said, and she took a step forward, not back. Fear teaches hiding. Fear teaches shutting down. Fear makes you smaller, not stronger. Behind her, she felt Kira move closer to her legs. The pup was still scared, but Jiwoo's courage was giving her some strength. Ren and Tayo pressed close too. All 3 pups now standing with their human protector against one of the most powerful beings in their species. You know nothing of our ways, Kale said. But there was something in the commander's voice now. Not quite doubt, but maybe curiosity. You are right, Jiwoo agreed. I do not know your ways. But I know these 3 pups. I know that Kira is brave and protective of her siblings. I know that Ren is clever and loves solving puzzles. I know that Tayo is gentle and creative and makes the most beautiful music when he is happy. And I know that all 3 of them have learned more in 1 week of feeling safe and loved than they learned in months of being trained to fear everything. Softness, Kale said, but the word had less venom now. You have made them soft, have I? Jiwoo gestured to Bora, who stepped forward with her medical scanner. Show the High Commander the data, please. Bora pulled up the readings on a large display screen. These are the pups' development scans from when they arrived compared to now. You can see significant improvements in muscle density, bone strength, and neural development. Their immune systems are stronger. Their reaction times are faster. They are learning at an accelerated rate compared to typical Vrexian young. Kale studied the data with narrowed eyes. How is this possible? They have not been trained. They have not been hardened. They have been nurtured, Jiwoo said. They have been given safety and food and sleep and love. Their bodies and minds have been free to grow instead of just trying to survive. This is what happens when young creatures are allowed to actually be young. We cannot afford to be young, Kale said. Our world is harsh. Only the strong survive. But you are not on your world anymore, Yijin interjected. You are reaching for the stars, joining the galactic community. Maybe it is time to evolve. Maybe it is time to let your young be young so they can grow into stronger adults. Kyle turned to look at Vel, who had been silent this whole time. What do you say, Commander? You are their parent. Do you agree with what these humans have done? Vel was quiet for a long moment. Every eye in the room was on the Commander. Finally, Vel spoke, voice heavy with emotion. I had 4 offspring before these 3. I raised them the traditional way. The hard way. The right way, or so I thought. Vel paused, struggling with the words. 3 of them did not survive the training. They were not strong enough, I told myself. That is our way. Only the strong survive. Kel's scales shifted slightly. Even the High Commander knew the pain of losing offspring. But watching these 3 here, Vel continued, seeing them happy and healthy and learning so much, I think about my others. I think about what they could have been if they had been given this chance. 3 days passed. 3 days that changed everything. Jiwoo quickly learned that taking care of Vrexian pups was nothing like she expected. They were smart, much smarter than human children of the same age. They learned words in both languages within hours. They could solve simple puzzles that would challenge a human 5-year-old. But they also had no concept of things that human children learned naturally. On the second morning, Jiwoo was teaching them to eat at a table instead of tearing food apart on the floor. Kira kept trying to establish dominance by taking food from the others. When Jiwoo gently corrected her, the pup looked genuinely confused. Why? Kira asked through her small translator device. I am strongest. I eat first? That is law. That might be Vrexian law, Jiwoo said patiently. But here everyone gets to eat at the same time. No one is more important than anyone else. Kira stared at her like she had said something impossible. But strong must rule. Weak must follow. How else does pack survive? It was moments like these that Jiwoo understood just how different their cultures were. What Vrexians saw as survival, humans saw as cruelty. What humans saw as kindness, Vrexians saw as weakness. Bridging that gap would take time and patience. But there were moments of breakthrough too. On the 3rd day, Jiwoo introduced the pups to a very human concept. Play without purpose. Vrexian young trained constantly. Every game was about fighting, hunting, or survival. When Jiwoo first tried to roll a ball to them, they attacked it like prey. When she showed them building blocks, they looked for tactical advantages in the structures. Everything was about being stronger, faster, better. But what if we just play for fun? Jiwoo suggested, sitting on the floor with them. What if we build something just because it is pretty, not because it is useful? Why would we do that? Ren asked, tilting his head in that curious way he had. Because it makes you happy. Because it is nice to create something beautiful. Because sometimes not everything needs to be about survival. The pups looked at each other, clearly not understanding. So Jiwoo started building a tower out of blocks, just stacking them in colorful patterns. She did not make it tactical or strategic. She just made it pretty, with alternating colors and interesting shapes. Tayo watched with fascinated eyes. The smallest pup moved closer and carefully placed a block on top of Jiwoo's tower. It was slightly crooked, but Jiwoo clapped her hands together happily. Perfect. That looks wonderful, Tayo.
Tayo's scales brightened with pleasure.
The pup had never been praised for something that was not about strength or skill. It felt good. Soon, Ren joined in. And even Kira. Though she kept insisting her structures were tactical fortifications and not just pretty things. Bora stopped by later that afternoon to check on the pups' health. She found all 4 of them, 3 pups and 1 human, sitting in a circle playing a clapping game that Jae-hyun had taught them. The pups were laughing, actually laughing, making sounds that Jiwoo had never heard Vrexians make. "This is remarkable," Bora said, scanning them with her medical device. "Their stress hormones have dropped significantly. Their brain activity shows increased creativity centers lighting up. Jiwoo, what you are doing is actually changing their neural development." "Is that good or bad?" Jiwoo asked, worried. "It is very good. Their brains are forming new pathways, learning new ways to think. You are teaching them things their species has forgotten." But not everyone was happy about the changes. Commander Vel visited every evening, always standing stiffly in the doorway, watching but never participating. Jiwoo noticed that the pups acted differently when their parent was there. They stopped playing. They stood straighter. They tried to look tough and serious. "You can come inside," Jiwoo invited every time. "You can play with them." "That is not appropriate," Vel always replied. "I am here to observe, nothing more." But Jiwoo saw how Vel's eyes followed the pups with longing. She saw how the commander's scales would flicker when Tayo made a happy sound, or when Kira solved a puzzle, or when Ren built something creative. Vel loved them even if showing that love was forbidden in Vrexian culture. On the fourth day, something happened that changed everything. Jiwoo was teaching the pups about music. She played them soft earth songs on her tablet, showing them how humans used sound to express emotions, not just to communicate or warn. The pups were fascinated, swaying slightly to the rhythm, their scales pulsing in time with the beat. Then Tayo started humming. It was a soft, clicking hum, different from any Vrexian sound Jiwoo had heard. It was musical, beautiful, sad, and happy at the same time. The other pups stopped and stared at their sibling in shock. "Tayo, that is beautiful," Jiwoo breathed. "Keep going." But Kira suddenly hissed at Tayo, aggressive and sharp. "Stop that. That is weakness sound. That is pup who will die sound." Tayo immediately went silent, scales dimming with shame. Jiwoo quickly moved between them, keeping Kira back. "That is enough, Kira." Tayo's humming was not weak. It was brave. It takes courage to make something beautiful. "No," Kira insisted, her young voice fierce. "Mother Commander always says beauty is trap. Says music is for prey species. Says Vrexians are hunters, not singers. We must be hard. We must be strong." Jiwoo's heart ached. These pups had been taught that anything soft, anything creative, anything beautiful was dangerous. They had learned to kill parts of themselves just to survive. She sat down and gathered all three pups close, even though Kira resisted. "Listen to me, all of you. Your mother commander loves you very much. But sometimes even parents are wrong about things. Being strong is important, yes. But being kind is also strong. Creating beauty is also strong. Expressing your feelings is also strong. Humans think everything is strong," Kira muttered. But she did not pull away from Jiwoo's arms. "No," Jiwoo corrected gently. "Humans think many things are strong. Not everything. We think strength comes in different forms. A warrior is strong, yes, but so is a parent who protects their child. So is an artist who creates beauty in a harsh world. So is someone who chooses to be kind when they could choose to be cruel." The pups were quiet, processing this idea. It went against everything they had been taught, everything their culture valued. But they trusted Jiwoo. She had kept them safe, kept them warm, made them happy. Maybe she was right about other things, too. "Will you teach us humans strong?" Tayo asked quietly. "Not just Vrexian strong?" "I will teach you all kinds of strong," Jiwoo promised. "And then you can decide what kind of person you want to be." That evening, Vel arrived to find Jiwoo teaching the pups to draw. They were using digital tablets, creating pictures of anything they wanted. Kira was drawing elaborate battle scenes, of course. Ren was drawing geometric patterns, precise and mathematical. But Tayo was drawing something else entirely. It was a picture of all of them. The three pups, Jiwoo and Commander Vel, all sitting together in a circle. In the drawing, Vel was not standing apart. Vel was sitting with them, arms around the pups. It was a picture of a family. Vel stared at the drawing for a long time. The commander's scales shifted through colors Jiwoo had never seen before. Finally, Vel spoke, voice rough with emotion. "They should not want this. I have given them nothing but discipline and distance. Why do they draw me with affection?" "Because they love you," Jiwoo said simply. Children love their parents even when those parents are complicated. Even when those parents make mistakes. "I have made so many mistakes," Vel said quietly. "I raised my first offspring the traditional way, and 3 of them died. I told myself it was necessary, that it was our way. But seeing these three thrive here with your softness and music and beauty, Vel's voice broke. What if I was wrong? What if everything I believed was wrong? Jiwoo stood and walked to Vel's side. The commander was so much taller than her, so much more powerful, but in that moment Vel seemed small somehow. You were not wrong, Jiwoo said. You were doing what you thought was right, what your culture taught you. But maybe it is time for your culture to learn something new. Maybe it is time for Vrexians to be strong in a different way. How? How do I change thousands of years of tradition? One pup at a time, Jiwoo said, gesturing to the three young Vrexians who were now watching them with curious eyes. You start with them. You show them a better way, and then they grow up and teach their pups and so on. Change is slow, but it happens. Vel looked at Jiwoo for a long moment. You are braver than any warrior I have ever known. You look at the most feared species in the galaxy, and see only children who need love. That is true strength. No, Jiwoo said with a gentle smile. That is just being human. Later that night, as Jiwoo was putting the pups to bed on their heated mats, something unprecedented happened. Commander Vel, the mighty Vrexian warrior, sat down on the floor with them. The pups stared in shock. I would like to stay, Vel said awkwardly. Just for a while. Just until they sleep. Jiwoo's eyes filled with happy tears. Of course. So they sat together, a human woman and a Vrexian commander, while three pups slowly drifted off to sleep. Tayo was the last to go, fighting to keep his eyes open, wanting to see this moment last as long as possible. His parent actually staying, actually there. When they finally slept, Vel very gently, very carefully touched each pup's head in turn. It was the first time the commander had shown them physical affection since they saw.